Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsay, a psychologist in Silicon Valley and the host of SuperPsyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. SuperPsyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. I've mentioned it before, but it bears repeating. The average American will work approximately 90,000 hours in their lifetime. What can we do to bring more joy to those hours? The answer is, well, several things. And one of those things is having a meaningful side hustle. It might be something you love doing that pays, or it might be an energizing hobby. My guest, Jed Goldstein, was trained and licensed as an attorney. He came to realize that job was not entirely for him, and he became a legal recruiter. But something was still missing. Turns out he had abandoned his love of guitar. When he picked it up again, he found a renewed passion so profound and so fulfilling that he went all in and joined a successful Grateful Dead tribute band. Jed would become an integral part of the band, and ultimately they would be called Working Man's Jed. Jed explains how leaning into his side hustle has helped him be more energized in his profession as well as in his crucial life roles as father and husband. So listen in as Jed and I talk about finding new energy in life with the side hustle. Jed Goldstein, welcome to SuperPsyched.
Adam Dorsay, great to be here.
My man, for the listener, if you've read my book, the guy who I talk about in it is Jed Goldstein. And subsequently, if you've heard me on any podcast talking about an insight that I had just last year, and I want to just come in hot with this idea because it was an insight I had. I hadn't seen you in about 9 years. And you and I hang out, and I came to realize that at this rate, I may see you approximately 4 or 5 more times because we live bi-coastally. So I have made it a priority to at least call you on the phone. Calling on the phone is still really good. And ideally see you on Zoom as much as I possibly can because there's something so great about seeing you. And I'm experiencing that right now as I do a podcast episode, which is kind of like the colliding of two great worlds.
It shakes me up to think that could be the case, but that's why you are who you are, because you did the analysis on that. And so I'm with you, brother. I'm so glad that I do think we're doing a good job on the phone. And as I'm seeing you through the computer on the Zoom, it shows that this really is a whole other level of being able to connect when we are bi-coastal. And I also hope we crush this 4 to 5 time outlook. And that's like a personal goal of mine.
4 to 5. Seeing you on Zoom for a year at least.
Yeah. But what you were saying was that if we keep our pace, it's 4 to 5 times physically.
Oh, that's right. I did mean, yeah, we got to crush that. We got to at least 3x that.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. It's too precious. Our worlds collided in the best ways. I'm using that term again. And I had just left my company. You and I were starting at a startup, seated next to each other, and well, you can share the
well,
or I'm just, it's way too funny.
I'm just laughing because I'm looking at your giggling face, and it was the very first thing I saw when you walked in on your first day was you doing that. And it was just like, I just knew right away this was going to be trouble because I was just like, me and that guy are going to have a lot of fun. I was going to be like really good friends with that guy. And I was immediately worried, like it was going to be very distracting. And then they sat you down next to me. And it was the most beautiful thing that could have happened. I mean, look, the job itself was very silly. It was in the height of the .com boom. And my main memories from it were just the hilarious conversations we would have and all the funny people and all just the two of us just observing the hilarity of it all.
Right. That was unbelievable.
And the connecting and all the great lunches. And I mean, I think the purpose of that whole experience was really to meet Adam Dorsay.
Dude, I absolutely and unequivocally believe the only reason I had that job was to meet Jed Goldstein. And that is the lasting artifact from that. And I'm so glad we've maintained touch. You were the first person to tell me, really, somebody who really got it, that I should become a therapist. And that was a seedling that you gave me as a gift somewhere around, I want to say October of 99. And it really got in there. It was like, oh, somebody like Jed. And this is like just such a testament to friendship, what friendship can do. You championed me at that moment. You saw something within me. You gave me a seed that I grew over the next 10 years. And so I'll never forget that moment. So I just have to thank you for that. And speaking of this, so much has changed. I mean, you and I were single guys and single kind of bachelor pads. And now we both have wives and 2 children and careers. You went on to earn a law degree and go through all of the fiery hoops of becoming a lawyer. And during that time, it's almost like a fairy tale. You took something and put it under your bed, to my recollection. That would be your guitar. Kind of Tarantino style, we're going to kind of time jump. Let's go back to the origin story of you and guitar. How did that even start before we even bring it back to law school, post-law school, and where you are now?
So it really started, I mean, I had fooled around with it a little bit my freshman year in high school, but it really started in earnest my sophomore year. I was always kind of a jock, and I think struggled in school and learning disabilities. School wasn't where I got my self-esteem from, and sports was. I was really great at it, and it was like my whole life until I switched schools when I was a sophomore in high school to a regional high school, and I was no longer in the small private school where I could be king of the Jews, you know? And I was cut from the basketball team first and then the baseball team, which was really hard because up until that point, sports had really been, like I said, where I got all my self-esteem from, and my identity was so built around it. And also I was in a new school and a regional school, and I was kind of finding my way. I was going through puberty like way before anybody else. I had like a full beard, and the kids like thought I was a narc. So they didn't want to be friends with me. Did I ever tell you about this? I'm not even kidding you. Like, because I get it. Yeah, I had a full beard. And they were just like, this guy doesn't look like he's 15. Like, we're not buying this.
I remember that you would shave, and an hour later, it was pretty much stuff. Yeah. If not, it was really, you're a fast grower. Anyway, keep going.
So what did I have? I had the guitar. Would come home from school and just strum my acoustic guitar. And it was sort of my lifeline. You know, it's like a really beautiful arc. It was there for me. It was the thing that was there for me. And I had the time. So it's what allowed my hands to kind of form the muscle memory around playing chords and bar chords. And very soon I was, as a young person, sort of identifying more around the guitar and music. And that kind of graduated into bands. I was in my first band that year. And then I was in another, my first band, Surgeon General's Warning, followed up junior year by Colonel Curtis, named after an Army recruiting officer who tried to recruit our frontman. These were classic high school bands. Yeah, and it was just like kept going, and then got to college and had some really epic bands in college. And that was really joyous on a level musically. And I really came into my own musically in college. And it was sort of like, wow, this powerful. I had this great 8-piece funk band called Aesop Zone my freshman, sophomore year. And we played, and it was kind of like when we, went to Skidmore, which is a small school in upstate New York. And when we played, it was kind of like that was like what was happening. The advantage of kind of being in a small pond. So just that feeling of being a young person and having hundreds of people come see you play and feeling like this is it. This is what I'm here for.
What is this?
Yeah. Like this is the thing that it was indescribably satisfying and gratifying. And for a while thought like, gosh, this is what I have to do.
I'm just imagining, I'm seeing your face playing with all these bands and experiencing flow. Like flow is that thing where you are doing something maybe for 2 hours and it feels like only 20 minutes have gone by. Mm-hmm. You're challenged, you're immersed, you're completely in the zone. And I'm guessing it was very similar to playing sports. And one of the reasons by the way, just digression, one of the reasons I started laughing when you started talking about sports is I've seen you play sports. You're the most chill guy in real life to hang out with. But if you start playing a sport, you become so intense. You're like Draymond Green out there. You have a very different game face. And I find myself wondering about flow in sports, game face in sports versus flow when you're playing and game face. Because I think you have that kind of sweet equilibrium when you play your music that you take it seriously. Like you are committed to improvement, but you're also committed to having fun when you play. How do you walk that very thin line between fun and seriousness so that both can exist?
That's a great observation and question. And I think I would say that the seriousness comes into play largely in your preparation and your practice. And I'm a practice fiend. It comes at the cost of other things in life because we've only got so much time. But I don't really like to go out for dinner with someone I don't really like that much. If it means, like, I'd rather just stay home and play guitar. If Adam Dorsay's in town, well, then let's go out to dinner at night. But it's like, I'm always kind of evaluating. I don't watch that much TV because I'd rather play guitar. It's basic math. The more you practice, the more the music will give to you. So that's where really the hard work comes in, is in your preparation for, in your practice. And then when you play a show, that's kind of where the fun comes in, and you can let go a little bit, and all the work that you've put into preparing for that show and preparing for all the songs you're going to play, hopefully can come out in a way that's relaxed.
I got to just chime in on that. It's such an important, you're making so many points. You're talking about the opportunity cost of time, and we only have so many heartbeats.
Yeah.
All of us have 86,400 seconds per day. None of us has more. And seconds, it seems like a lot. 86,000 of these, like, actually they matter.
Yeah.
The second thing that you're talking about is constraints. I remember learning from a science teacher that constraints actually increase creativity. Like if I say, go do something versus go practice your guitar. The constraint is go practice your guitar. You will more likely be using your time well. And I'm thinking about sacrifice. You got to sacrifice to the gods if you want to get something. And I love that idea of preparing before you get together. I remember back in the day when I used to do these AIDS rides, these bike rides from SF to LA. I did them 3 years in a row. And one of the things they said is the more you train for this ride, the more fun you'll have during the ride. And you're saying exactly the same thing. And so I trained like a crazy person because for me, fun is the whole game. And so I experienced all the lactic acid, all the wind at my front, riding through the rain and just cursing and praying and asking myself, why am I doing this? And then on the ride, it was like, oh yeah, this is the greatest thing ever. And you're saying one last thing that I just would love to make a billboard around. Consume less, create more. Consume less meaning watch less stuff, be on social media less. What are you doing? You're wasting your time. You're giving them your eyeballs. Create more. Play the guitar. Do your thing, whatever that thing is, and your tens. And this has become your side hustle on top of your day job, which is absolutely brilliant because back at Skidmore, somehow you had a flash of light. You were like, I know I've got to do this. And you probably also knew that to become, I don't know, U2 or Jack Antonoff or any really big music star who can make money and support a family, that's hard. And it's not that you wouldn't have done it, but you do it alongside something else. You figured out a way to keep that commitment to yourself. So just a little teaser for what comes ahead. One last thought, names of bands, I love them. They make me laugh. All of the names that you threw down and the reasons for them, some of them are so snarky, winky, and hilarious. And some of them can be a little bit, what's the word? The Aesop's one is, literary. It just kind of reflects to the time in life.
Mm-hmm.
Does it not? I was in Cafe of Regret and back then Tears for Fears and Depeche Mode. Oh my, correct. And I had no business being there, by the way. The drummer, the guitarist, and the keyboardist and singer were so good. And I was so mediocre, but they liked having me around because I was fun. And so I got my nickname from the drummer of Enthusiasm, which I am forever grateful for. It was great. And I experienced just so much joy playing and practicing with these guys. It was some of the most fun I've ever had. And here you are doing this in addition to everything else. What would you say? You're working during the day.
Mm-hmm.
You're fathering. You're a world-class dad, by the way, and husband and pet dad. This is a big question, but how does this improve your life, having access to this part of yourself, the musician?
It's like fuel for all those other aspects of my life. Maybe it sounds cheesy, but it really does make me a better husband and a better dad because it's the thing that fulfills me. So if like all I'm doing all day is a desk job, not that there's anything wrong with a desk job, or pick your choice, whatever job it is that's not fulfilling to you. I actually have a job that I like, but music is what feeds my soul. And when I can really give to it and I can really practice consistently, because when you're practicing well, you're always getting better. And it's just the most satisfying feeling. You put the guitar down after an hour or an hour and a half and you're like, I'm better than I was an hour and a half ago. I learned something I didn't know. I have this other piece. You start off practicing and sometimes your fingers are maybe not quite there and you're getting into the groove. And then you notice like 45 minutes later, I'm like, oh, I'm moving around a lot quicker. Everything's a lot smoother. And then a half an hour after that, it's like, oh my God, I'm really in it now. And then you take that energy to pick up the kids from whatever activity they're at and you feel like $1 million because you have it too. It's like the other guy, my buddy Jeff, who kind of leads the band with me, or he's our front person, other guitar player. He plays at 6 a.m. He's also got kids and he's literally practicing. That's when he practices at 6 a.m. And I think it's like for the rest of the day, he knows I got this awesome practice and, I'm like, no matter what happens the rest of the day.
I remember when I would pick my son up on Fridays when he was in middle school. And Fridays back then were my recording days for the podcast. And he said, I loved it when you'd pick me up after a podcast interview because you had so much more energy. You were so stoked. And I think about the son of stoke. I think about the guitarist. I think about the athlete. I think about the person who's just come off stage, crushing it after a public address of some kind. Playing the guitar for you is that stoke. I love that you shared how it makes you better in all domains. When you feed that part of yourself, you have way more fuel to give to the other important areas of your life.
I wish everybody had this because I think until you have it, you don't necessarily know it. You see a lot of people just thinking, all right, I'm in my prime years right now and I need to just work and like build up, enough money to send my kids to college and just get through this period. I respect that view, but I think it's often overlooked that if you have a passion in your life, it can feed you and it's actually an energy source that can make all your other endeavors more fruitful.
I'll do it tomorrow idea, or I'll do it someday. You and I both know that oftentimes someday never comes. Tomorrow never comes in that way. We don't really do it. We got to seize it. And I'm thinking about the guitar under the bed. Here you are in law school, one of the most demanding intellectual, cognitive, and academic achievements. I hear the first year alone is just absolute hell in law school. And forget about the bar that you've had to pass on top of everything else and the clerkships and everything else. In order, I'm guessing, for your brain to do all of the hard things it had to do when you were in law school, the guitar was under the bed. And I'm just kind of wondering, if this were a movie and the guitar could talk to you saying, play me or something like that, let's hear what your thoughts are on that.
I think, I had a friend put it this way, that music has just kind of claimed me. And that however hard law school was going to be was not going to be made any easier by going without the thing that makes you feel human. I have close friends who play music, who I played music with 20 years ago, who went in a different professional direction and stopped. And I don't judge anyone for it, but I think if you're a musical person and you're not giving attention to that thing, like, at least for me, there was a part of me that was just really hurting. And so when I started playing again 12 years later, it felt like oxygen flowing into my lungs. You know, like I've just gotten out of the pool and somebody just performed CPR on me. And it was like, and I just remembered, you know, I was like, oh my God, how did I forget about this thing? But it was all part of the journey. I think it made me appreciate having it back so much more. Life's always clearer in hindsight.
You really gave me a visceral experience when you were describing coming up for air by playing guitar again. Like, oh yes, this is the kind of animal I am. I am a guitar playing animal. And if I don't play guitar, it's kind of like an animal being at the zoo, not actually in his own habitat. So that feel right?
Great analogy. Great analogy. Yeah.
And to be clear, his, her, or their own habitat, to be more inclusive in terms of pronouns. And I remember it coming back for you. So you'd been in all these bands, you'd been in funk bands, you'd been in rock bands, and then you decide to go Grateful Dead. Let's talk about, you can't play all the things. So you doubled down on the Grateful Dead, more specifically, what John Mayer dubbed the hardest thing in all of music, the Jerry position in the Grateful Dead. He said, you have no idea until you try to play it, just how unbelievably hard and rich it is. And you're not just there to play a technical thing, you're there to take the person on a journey. And that, my friend, is really hard. And you do it. I've seen you do it. I've seen the Dead, or I've seen Dead & Co. a number of times. You actually carry it out. And I see you differently, by the way. You cease to be my good buddy, Jed. You become a musician in that moment. And I just appreciate, I see both, but I see a legitimate musician who gets paid to play because you're that good. So how did you decide to double down on the Dead of all the pieces?
Keep saying these wonderful things. I'll just sit back. This is all great. I'll let you recover.
Oh, I'm recovering little by little.
So I had grown up I was a Deadhead as a kid. I mean, I had been exposed to the Grateful Dead by like a partner, close friend of the family who was a partner in my dad's law firm, who was like, Jed, check this out. Mm-hmm. And then took me to a Dead show when I was like in 8th or 9th grade. And I was a huge fan and got to see the Dead like 20 times or so. And so it was always kind of a love affair dating back to childhood where this music was really in me. And I never fully left. I moved on to other things. I mean, when I was in college, there weren't really Dead bands. You were more impressionable in college. Like, I wouldn't have been really hip in my mind then to have like a Dead band. It didn't even occur to me. And it didn't occur to me for a while. And then sort of picked my head up. Actually had a friend who was getting over a rough divorce and asked me what he should do about it. And I'm like, well, you're a musician. He was in my very first band, Surgeon General's Warning. And I'm like, well, dude, I mean, like 2 pieces of advice. One, start going to the gym because that might help. And the other one's like, get in a band, man, like you're a musician like me. And so he saw that there was a Dead cover band that needed a guitar player and he tried out. And I went and saw him play and my jaw fell on the floor. I was like, oh my God, that looks so much fun. And he was sort of half in it. He was a good musician, but he wasn't really learning the parts. And I think he was losing interest. And then he started dating some other woman that was more interesting to him. And they were getting frustrated because his commitment wasn't great. And he knew how much I loved it. So at some point, they were like, hey, man, I think we got to let you go because you're not really learning the parts. You're not that committed. And this is the best part. His response was, you know what? It's totally cool. You guys were great. Really helped me get over this divorce. I'm dating someone now I'm really into. He's like, but let me tell you, my friend Jed would really be interested in playing with you guys. Yeah. So this was 2 bands ago. So he and this guy, Howard, who ran the band, was very surprised. He was like, wait a minute, we're throwing you out of the band and you're setting us up with your best friend? And he's like, yeah, it's totally cool. Totally cool. So that was the beginning of it. And my chops were out of shape, hadn't been playing that much. I got to try out with these guys, but immediately I fell. This was when the oxygen started flowing back into my lungs. And it was so joyous to me because I knew this music from hours and hours of listening to it and there's something special about the music you fall in love with when you're younger, right?
Exactly. And actually, there are neurological studies to show that we have more of these hormones during that time. And when they're paired with those new emotions, we hear that music from that time. It's by far the most emotionally provocative music.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you talk about the science behind it, because Stacey and I just had a whole conversation about this as I was trying to explain to her why I was so in love with the Grateful Dead. And she was like, yeah, but Jed, you also listened to it when you were like 16 and 17, and I didn't, so I'm not,
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
So I had had that primary experience, and now I was getting to know these songs musically from a playing perspective. And it was just the most thrilling experience. And I became completely obsessed immediately. I just all I wanted to do was study Jerry and learn these songs. And it was almost overwhelming. I remember I was having dreams about the music, and it was literally waking me up. And to John Mayer's point, it's vast and complicated. I probably had the advantage over him in that I was a Deadhead. He had an advantage over me in that he's John Mayer.
Pretty good to be John Mayer. I'm just saying.
For sure, but from my angle, it looks pretty good.
Pretty good.
So, yeah, and I played with those guys for a couple years, and I just couldn't get enough of it. That band sort of petered out a little bit, and then I helped put this other band together with this guy, Jeff, that I referenced earlier, and it's already been 7.5 years of playing in the more recent band called Working Man's Jed.
Which I need to ask you about, because you could have chosen Grateful Jed. You could have gone Jed and Company. Instead, you cite an album of the Grateful Dead. I believe it's Working Man's Dead. And how did you choose that name? I mean, obviously, Jed had to be in there because Jed and Dead are perfect.
Well, also, there's a song named Tennessee Jed.
Tennessee Jed. Also, you could have had that one. That's right.
Could have had that one too. So it was
that one. Yeah.
It was kind of like the combining of those two Dead references, the fact that my name was Jed. I felt a little bit weird about it. It seems like a little narcissistic, but I wasn't insisting on the name. There was popular support. It wasn't unanimous. There were a couple people who thought it was but it's our name now. Nothing they can do about it now. It's 7.5 years of brand awareness. We can't change it.
It's a fantastic name. And the crazy thing about it is, here you are. You come from kind of a sea of lawyers. Your dad was a very celebrated lawyer whose memory is a blessing. Truly, Bruce Goldstein was one of the greatest people I have ever had the pleasure of knowing. I miss him, even though I hardly got to hang with him. And I'm forever grateful that he brought you into this world. Then you met your wife in law school. She is absolutely crushing it as a lawyer. And I'm just thinking the courage it took for you to say, you know what? I went through all of these fiery hoops and I'm going to forego this whole law thing and become a legal recruiter and a musician, ultimately, both. I'm guessing that got some courage, some faith in leaping into, away from a secure thing, which is a well-grooved path in law versus breaking out on your own.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking about it with Ivy, my little one, who I was walking to school with today. And I say my little one, she's almost 12, not that little,
and she talks like a 30-year-old.
She's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think it's all part of the journey, but it was a tough pill to swallow, 3 years of law school. And then I did 2 clerkships with 2 years of working for 2 different judges. And then to find yourself doing the thing and realizing oh, I don't like this thing. And it's both making me miserable, and it's also not set up. It's not aligned with any of my superpowers in the way that I was practicing law, which was at a big firm where they value things like hyper organization, attention to detail.
These are 2 of your non-strengths.
Correct. And, the funny thing is, Stacey, my wife, she thought I was nuts to even be in law school when we met. I mean, I think she was just I love you, but, are you sure? But, you're focused on something. So I guess it took some courage, but at the same time, I was really unhappy. So I tell my kids, how much courage did it take for you after all those years to go back to school? I mean, you're like the shining light of not settling when you're doing something that's not lighting you up. And neither one of us were lit up by what we were doing before we got on a different path. So I have so much gratitude because I kind of fell into legal recruiting. And it turns out this is something I enjoy. And it does play, I think, toward my strengths, which is working with people and connecting with people and actually helping people. This idea that like people have in mind when they go to law school, but rarely get to execute on. Most people end up going to law firms and working for businesses, but I get to actually genuinely help people navigate their careers. It's entrepreneurial, which is fun. I worked for someone for a while and learned a lot of things and then opened up my own company. So I've got a few folks working for me and it gives me the flexibility to see my kids a lot. I work from home and play music. So I can pick up the guitar in the middle of the day and that will only enhance my day as long as I have time for it. So I mean, more than anything, I just feel super grateful. It's just one of these things you never would have envisioned. And I never envisioned playing music in my 40s. I just turned 50, as you know. And I think I'm just so grateful that, like, looking back on the past decade, I would have never thought that would have been such a big musical decade for me. The decade I got back into music and played, we counted up, our band has played almost like 100 shows during that time. And countless other, just jams and all the time in this room playing music. So yeah, I feel just lots of gratitude for it. I guess it took some courage. It always takes some courage to change directions. I remember the Freakonomics guys. Did you ever hear the Freakonomics episode on failure?
I'm not sure I heard that one, but I love them.
It's a great one. I forget which one it is. The super brainy one.
The journalist.
Dubner?
Yeah, Dubner and I forget the other guy's name, but keep going.
Yeah, he was just talking about how when he was in business school at University of Chicago, there was like a certain type area he wanted to study. And his mentor was just like, hey, listen, this isn't going to work out for you. You don't have this. And it was helpful for him because it helped him realign. And for me, if I'm being honest, like I was failing at being a lawyer at a law firm. And it was helpful because it forced me to figure something else out. Sometimes I almost think like quietly succeeding in something that is making you miserable or like very unfulfilled is almost worse.
Dory Clark, who teaches over at Columbia School of Business, said on my podcast that failure is merely data. If you just look at it as data, it's not so harmful. And that's exactly what you did. As
totally.
It's like, oh, yeah, so this doesn't work. And this is not going to be a way that I make free throws. If we were playing basketball, I need to find another thing. And to that point, your reality is the byproduct of spectacular creativity because you created something that you had to see the patterns and say, these are the aspects of the life I want. And that came from conscious and unconscious questions you were asking yourself. I've heard it said that the quality of our questions determines the quality of our life. And I'm wondering, just for the sake of the listener, if you can just boot up some questions you might have asked yourself to create this reality so that they might be able to ask themselves similar questions. What questions did you ask yourself when you were in the midst of like, oh my gosh, this is a detailed focused area and the kind of work here I'm doomed to fail at? How do I create a life that I absolutely love? Might have been one of the questions you asked in kind of a very big zoomed out way. But I'm wondering, like, what are some of the macro and micro questions you might have asked yourself if you were guessing consciously or unconsciously?
Yeah, I mean, I think even going back further in time with our kids, I'm curious if you agree. I imagine you do, but one of the joys of having kids is not imposing, if we think about our parents' generation, it was just like Jews of a certain generation. It was like, go to college, go to grad school, please be a doctor. We'll settle if you're a lawyer. And those are the options. And that was sort of that generation. And I get why it was that way. Right. But I think for our generation, it's a lot more curiosity about who these people are that we brought into the world. And for me, that's what's fun about being a dad, is just like, these kids are really interesting and watching them develop. And like, so like step number one, who are you? What is it that lights you up? And what are your superpowers? And for me and for you, our superpowers, one of is connecting with other human beings. So any job that would deprive us of that, I'm generalizing for the both of us, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is the wrong job. And that wasn't really emphasized to me. Like, I didn't have like a guidance counselor who was just like, Jed, these are the areas to look at where you're going to connect, because we're people. So, and we're not detail people. So, there's lots of different ways you can go with that. But for me, like, I don't think that was ever really emphasized as much.
You just answered that question so brilliantly. Basically, what you're saying is, ask yourself the same questions you'd ask your kids if you wanted them to love their work life.
Yeah.
And that's what we want for our children, is for them to tap into their sparkle. We're going to spend about 90,000 hours of our lives at work. And Freud gets kicked around a lot for what he didn't do right, but so many of the things that he said, we now just take for granted as fact. One of his great contributions was the idea that love and work are the biggest parts of the pie chart in our lives. That if we can crush it in love and we can crush it at work, that's a pretty good start. And you and I clearly want this for our children. We want them to crush it in love and at work. And I ask them questions that I might not have asked myself to try to help them get there. So inasmuch as self-compassion is showing so much promise as something to assist us as we live, I mean, so much so that the Navy SEALs are using it with great results. Asking our children questions and noticing what we're asking them and asking the same questions to ourselves, I think that's one of the things that you just basically dropped.
Yeah, I think that's right. From the way we parent our kids ourselves.
Exactly. And you do it so well. Go back to the band for a minute. All right. So your buddy Howard, it's almost like he had been married to his dream woman. And she says, you know what? I don't think you're right for me. And Howard says, you know what? You're right. I'm not right for you, but my friend Jed is. Of like the greatest, kindest, most generous response to being dumped of all time. There's just so much to this origin story. You go in, you find your voice on a guitar, you decide to play Jerry's position, you acknowledge just how hard it is to go through the transformation. It feels like a Marvel movie of like when he goes through like some physiological change to become the superhero. To learn the Jerry role, of course your sleep was disrupted. Of course it was all encompassing for a period, because you're going through kind of a bit of a mental transformation to try to accommodate, how do I take people on a trip that Jerry might take people on, is what I'm kind of gleaning, because I've seen you do it.
It's still super daunting, and there are so many guys who do it at such a high level. And I'm pretty sure all of them find it very challenging all the time, because Jerry was just super special. And that's why there are so many bands, and the Grateful Dead and was so special. And that's why there's so many bands playing this music. There's some really good Eagles cover bands, right? And the Eagles were a great band and wrote these great songs. And your task is pretty clear if you're in an Eagles cover band. You're just trying to recreate these songs exactly as they are in the album, which is not easy. But once you kind of have that, you have it. You never really have it for the Grateful Dead. It's always a work in progress, just as it kind of was for them. There's so much to learn all the time. You're listening to this music and you're hearing things. You've been listening to tracks you've listened to forever and hearing things that you hadn't heard. The Grateful Dead have all these different eras. Some people gravitate toward like 1970 or 1972. And I kind of love the classic spring 77 phase. And then there are people who are all throughout, and they evolved, and they were always evolving. It never really gets old. That's why people play this stuff, I think, forever. And it's really about being in a band with these other people and getting to know them the way that the members of the Grateful Dead knew each other, so that you can have a musical conversation and go into a show. And there's this beautiful it's unknown. There's this beauty in going into a show and just not really knowing what's going to unfold and being open to it.
As you're laying this out for me and you kind of put it alongside why you left law in this way, because it was so precise. Like being in a band, you got to be precise, because people, if you don't play Hotel California exactly right.
Yeah. You got to nail that solo just perfectly.
Everyone has heard it so many times. Like, you don't crush it. And people go bananas if you do. But if you don't, if you're not precise, if you're kind of in the ballpark, you're going to get some reduced marks. Whereas with the Dead, it accommodates your brain and it's more spacious. Like there are more ways to answer the equation than doing it precisely, because they do it on infinite loop.
Completely. Going back to what you said, I think toward the beginning of our conversation, you practice, but then when you play a show, you kind of got to let it go because you just don't know how it's going to go. And you have these, it's like, oh, I learned all this cool stuff, but you don't even know if that cool stuff is even going to apply. The music just might be hitting in a different way. And you can't be so married to these musical ideas that you're going to force them on top of, because your keyboard player and your bass player might be in a different place and the vibe might call for something completely different. It gets on what you were talking about. It's like you're practicing, but you're also trying to let go to the point where you can flow with what's happening that night. And it's not easy. Sometimes you're just like, no, I have these ideas. I practiced this really cool thing. I'm going to whip it out. And you try and whip it out and it's like, oh, that was forced. I mean, the great news.
God, that's so great.
But the great thing about this music is you're allowed to fuck it up a little bit. They fucked it up all the time. They would train wreck it sometimes. And I think that's what people kind of like about our band is we're not afraid to really go for it. And sometimes we're just like, whoa, that was a little shaky. But you know what? You pick up, it's like you get knocked over and you pick up, and fans of the music are very forgiving in that way. And I think they like seeing us kind of go for it and like, it's okay. What's the worst that's going to happen? You try something kind of crazy and it doesn't work out. I mean, the Grateful Dead literally did that all the time.
And basically you're talking about improv and the magic that it can create. And you and I have both done improv classes, but playing improv with music is very, I think, similar and different to, say, being Tina Fey with Will Ferrell up on stage doing something unplanned and unscripted and hilarious. There is a kind of trust there in self, a trust in other that has to be there. And I'm wondering, how do you communicate with the guys on stage while you're live to make sure that there's kind of a vibe check, like, are we going in the same direction? But you can't obviously send them a text or really have a nice conversation about it because you're live.
Frankly, they all kind of make fun of me because apparently when I'm soloing, my eyes will get really big. Jeff is always accusing me of doing these head fakes, thinking I'm cueing out of a section when really I'm just kind of doing this. On one level, it's fun to kind of practice.
And by the way, just for the person who couldn't see him doing this, you're doing a series of bows up and down,
right.
Bobbing up and down like a guitarist. But yeah, it could signal something to the other band members
correct,
come in.
Yeah, they're always giving me a hard time for getting fake head pumps. They figure wait, is he signaling something? Or no, he's just bobbing around to the music. But
he's just praying.
Yeah, exactly. He's just davening.
Exactly.
Look, when you see the bands who do it really well, they just know each other's musical language. They're just speaking musically and they can just kind of give each other a glance. There's this band, Joe Russo's Almost Dead, and they're probably the most popular band covering the Grateful Dead now. And these guys are just masters at their craft. And the transitions, one of the things we like to do that JRAD, that's what they go by, their acronym, does incredibly well is come up with unique ways of transitioning in and out of Grateful Dead tunes. One of the things they did that would be really cool is they'd play for an hour straight, weaving the songs in and out of each other.
Wow. That sounds impossible.
They had kind of their signature ways of doing it.
I see. So they figured out ways to make that work. It just, to my ears, it just sounds so massive. It sounds like a long dragon in a parade.
It is. I mean, it is. It's part of the art of doing this stuff. So it's something we definitely will do. We'll do that sometimes, and we'll try to come up with our own ways, like that are unique of getting in and out of the songs. And these guys, J-Rad, I mean, they just go in and out in all kinds of interesting, unique ways. And I've seen them and like a very quick look, and they know exactly, they're able to communicate to each other, like exactly what it's mind-boggling.
And it sounds like that's something that you room for growth, so to speak.
100%.
One of the things that I love about what you're saying is because, I mean, to me, the viewer, I've watched you guys, and to me, I'm just like, oh God, these guys literally couldn't get any better, but you are in the weeds. And Anders Ericsson out of Penn State University was the guy who gave the data that the 10,000 hours you become except he didn't say it that way. Malcolm Gladwell took it a little bit differently, but Anders Ericsson talks about the idea of deliberate practice, like looking at where you are and how can I get just a little bit better. And that seems like that has been both your process as a musician who is practicing on his own so he can be as good as he can with the band, as well as the gestalt of the band. Like the entire band is committed to that deliberate practice, like doing post-game analyses, asking what went well, what to continue, and what we could improve upon, and really being deliberate. Does that seem true for you personally, as well as for Working Man's Jed?
It does, very much so. We practice a lot, and there's always a little bit of back and forth within the band about whether we kind of overdo it and just like should improvise, just like improvise more. But I believe strongly that the practice is even practicing how to improvise, how to transition from one song to another. You don't get to that point of excellence just by winging it. It's like learning a language. So we love to practice. Jeff and I always say, like, we would be happy if we played in Jeff's parents' basement, which is pretty hilarious. I don't know if I ever told you that.
Yeah, they love really funny.
Yeah, it's great.
These grown-ass men playing
totally
parents' basement, almost like in high school. Like, that's what we did.
It's pretty much what it is. I mean, there's like the bar mitzvah pictures are up on the wall. And it could not be a better place to practice. It's fantastic. The price is great. They love having us there.
Okay, so I need to cite something. Ellen Langer out of Harvard did this study with these old men. And what she had them do was wear the clothes of their when they were 20 years younger. They were playing the music from 20 years prior, and they did pre and post tests on their vitals, various measures on their blood and heart rate and other signs of health for the baseline beforehand. And then they had the intervention of going back in time. And lo and behold, they were healthier when they went back in time. Their brains somehow subconsciously believed that they were young again. As you go into Jeff's basement and see these old photos and go to this place, this parents' house, you kind of get to healthfully regress into a much younger age state. So one of the things that I've always loved about you, Jed, is you are forever young. You will, at 100 years old, seem like a teenager because like my kids knew it when they met you. When I said Jed is the coolest guy ever, they're like, yeah, Dad, he absolutely is the coolest guy ever. They got it. But here you are staying young, showing that it's a state of mind in Jeff's parents' basement. And you're doing Langer's work, basically, when you practice there. I'm guessing it feels like the fountain of youth.
You know, I never thought about it, but you're like quite like that. It's very sweet because it brings back memories of playing in my house growing up, because my parents were the same way. They would love it if I had friends come over and we would play in the basement. And it's his parents are a bit younger and they still got the family house. I mean, it's a little awkward because we made it clear that they're not allowed to move. At some point, they may want to downsize. It's a nice place to play every week, because what a lot of musicians are forced with is going to like these rehearsal studios, which can be kind of dingy and, you know, not really welcoming. And you got to often schlep your stuff in. And it makes such a difference to be able to play there. I'm very grateful. Thank you, Scott and Terry.
Oh, that's amazing. Scott and Terry, you rock. You know, I have to share this story because it relates to the fountain of youth, because you and I have seen it in a 93-year-old man. So you and I are listening to your new vinyl collection on your high fidelity stereo. And it's amazing. I say, who is this? And you're like, it's Les Paul. We're in Hoboken, New Jersey, in a very high level apartment overlooking Manhattan. And circa 2008. And you say with Les Paul, and I'm like, dude, is he still playing? He said, yeah, he plays every Monday in Manhattan. I said, it's Monday and there's Manhattan over there. You're like, oh, dude, you want to go? And I said, yes, I want to go. And so we go and see this 93-year-old Les Paul who is just months away from dying, tearing it up, flirting like a teenager. He had already been in a massive accident where they had to reset his arm, and he had it reset in such a way that it was uncomfortable, but would allow him to continue to play his guitar. Great choice, because what we got was, we saw longevity. We saw a legend tear it up beautifully and flirt it up and hilarity it up. And you could tell that this guy was truly alive while he was living. These are the seeds I see you planting for yourself.
Oh, man. Wow. The Les Paul, wasn't prepared for the Les Paul comparison.
Who knows? Maybe there will be a Jed Goldstein guitar. You never know.
I mean, look, if I'm alive and playing music in my 90s, well, what an amazing feat. I couldn't believe it. That was just the universe just aligned so perfectly that night that I was just, what are the chances that I would have thrown on a Les Paul CD? I was told it was because I was showing off my fancy stereo, and a lot of people don't know this, but Les Paul invented multi-track recording. All of his albums always, just the sound was crystal clear, and it was like, and you noticed it. You were like, this is amazing. And it was on a Monday, and of course our wives were like, go ahead, go
have a good time. We'll take care of Naven, our little boy. Yeah. Well, my man, is there anything I should have asked but haven't yet asked?
I think we covered a lot of ground, and we covered our origin story, right off the bat, which is great. And how many years of friendship do we have?
We have 26 years of friendship.
I mean, come on.
Almost to the day.
One of the things I'm most proud of, my friend.
I'm so grateful for it. And you have no idea how important you are to me in my life. I know that if I ever need a little boost, a little shot in the arm, all I need to do is dial up Jed. Even if I leave you just a dumb voicemail, I know I'll feel better. Even if it's just a one-way, just like knowing that you will hear it. Well, my man, I'm going to ask you my final magical question that I ask everybody, and this goes to you, Jed Goldstein. If you had the magical power to confer upon all humanity one insight or skill that would improve the lives of the individual, but since we're all connected, perhaps the people around that individual, what would that skill or insight be? And how do you imagine it would impact the individual as well as perhaps society at large?
Well, I would definitely say empathy. I feel like I'm probably not the first person who said that on your podcast, but, it continues to be the thing that I hope will save us as a society in a time when there's so much strife and othering, and if we can kind of remember how to put ourselves in other people's shoes and realize that we're all kind of wanting the same things and, like a safe and prosperous and kind world for ourselves and our kids, maybe we can make it through this. But I just discouraged by what I see as a downward trend over the last year, but I'm still hopeful that it can save us. So for me, I'm hoping for more empathy.
Well, I love that answer. I remember reading in an APA, American Psychological Association journal, that empathy is one of the qualities that really makes us human. And while there are other animals that have it, the way we can express it is crucial to just being human. And the more times people answer it, it's not like I'm looking for a unique answer. Actually, it adds and maybe even multiplies each time someone says the same answer, because it just makes it far more valid from my vantage point. So I wanted to say thank you for sharing your time, your heartbeats with my listener, the wisdom you've gleaned from finding a great side hustle that improves your life and by extension, everyone around you. I'm grateful to your guitar. I know it's a part of who you are.
Thank you, brother. What a pleasure this has been. Super special.
This is Dr. Adam Dorsay thanking you for listening to SuperPsyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe